and it's basically, the resource. He could not understand uh, the objective of the project properly. He couldn't make out what the project is about,
Yeah.
and he basically ended up delivering a project which was not supposed to be delivered. So basically, the scope of work which was being defined to him, it was being done the right way, and there was a lack of planning. There was no strategy from this resource because he never document anything in writing post he has a meeting. So he don't document anything so that the other person can tell him that you perceive it in the wrong way. This is not what I've communicated to you.
Yeah.
The scope of work is different and you need to work on different scope. So actually what happened with that project was that by the time, I kind of asked him that where are we at? Are we done with the project? It all turns out to be a disaster.
Oh, no.
So, and that's when we kind of realized that, the scope of work that we have, he can't even do that. I mean, though that's doable. So, there are some of the points, not having the right resource. Uh, the planning wasn't there because he never put a document anything in writing so that the other person could understand. So these were all the challenges that we faced during a project.
That's a great example. And there's a lot of resistance indicators in there, everything from avoidance, right?
Yeah.
Not sharing information, um, not, not being open and transparent about what he was doing, etc. So, there's a lot of just natural resistance in that. People will go to quite some lengths to avoid the impact on them personally. It's quite surprising sometimes what people will do, and often they're not necessarily thinking about that. Sometimes it's not even a conscious thing. They just don't want the change to impact them, which is again only natural. Good example. Any other quick examples that you might have?
I'll tell you another one that actually happened. So again, there was another project that we started several months back, and we basically joined um, after they started the whole thing. So basically, what has happened was there were a lot of things going on, and there were many things that are not clear. But somehow, someone has come up with a deadline that these phases has to be complete by this date. And we later realized that none of us actually knew the exact requirement for each and every phase. So basically, everyone in the team was really struggling to get the requirements and get things delivered on time. And when we started doing that, there were a lot of unforeseen technical blockers here and there on certain things. So that also turned out to be a difficult experience for us.
That's another good example, and it's a common one.
Yeah.
When we come to automation or kind of any kind of process information, is people either avoid giving requirements or hide requirements almost, try and cover up what's going on because they don't want to hand that information over, because they know if they hand the information over, it's going to be easy for you to automate or improve the process, right? So, keep it hidden is often one. Something else that can happen, especially if you come in a little bit after a project has started or halfway through or something like that, people keep saying, "Oh, we're not clear on the goal. What is the purpose of this? Give me more details. Give me more details. Give me more details." And this is actually a way of resistance when they ask for those, because often they actually know what the goal is, but they're asking the question because they want to delay things happening. Again, it's just a natural resistance mechanism. And again, often people don't consciously, know that they're doing that. That's just a defense mechanism that they have. So the next quick question, back on the Klaxon whiteboard.
Sorry, Mark. I'm having a just addition of Larry's question.
Yeah, go for it.
Pointer. So sometimes what happen, we have multiple chains while sharing the requirements or the goals. Majorly, this will happen with the banking and finance domain, and even where the multiple chains are there, and the few requirements are with someone else, and few other requirements with the other persons. So might be there are two or different teams. So within that teams, managing this is also a very crucial part. And when we are connecting with one person, let's say person A. So person A is saying, no, we have this detail with the person B. So how he can manage these things? Because this is a really too frustrating when we have multiple channels to collect the information and data from them.
Absolutely. I mean, almost the first resistance that pops up is not me, and everybody's pointing to everybody else, right? Oh, the problem's over there, or the requirements are over there. We
Right.
don't start here, start somewhere else. That's a super common resistance tactic, but there are ways to overcome all of that, of course. So that's a nice segue to the next question. So you want to jump on the whiteboard again. The next question along to the left in that board is then, okay, so with all of those resistance examples that we've talked through and the natural kind of things that happen, how can you overcome resistance? Go for it. Couple of minutes. See what you can come up with. How can you overcome some of that resistance that you're facing? Go for it. Couple of minutes. Lots of good ideas. Good communication. So get it in there. Education. Nice. Keep it coming. Oh, here we go. Now we've got some good ones. Yep. Very good. That's it. Keep them coming. That's it. Nice. Very good. Good. That's it. Keep them coming. Some really good ones here. Give it another 30 seconds. That's it. All right, let's take a look then. We've got some good ones on the board. Well done. You've got some really good input. And all of the input you've just put on the board is absolutely correct. You can do all of these things. And there are little tricks, little efficient ways of doing this as well. I'll start with communication. Communication can be a double-edged sword. You can do communication well, you can do communication not well at all. It comes a bit back to the communication preferences and the frustrations that can generate. If, for example, and the tendency is, I might say an unfair thing here, but often when we're doing automation, then often we're thinking and we're communicating very logically and very process-based, because that's the nature of what we're doing. Half of the population that we'll be communicating to, though, on average, are going to be interpersonal or creative thinkers, and that's going to be their natural preference. So if we're communicating only logically and process based, which is only, common because that's what we're doing in automation, then that's going to frustrate at least half of the population that you're communicating to. So I think a key word here is effective communication. I want to stress that. Effective communication takes on board and includes a little bit for all of the different communication preferences. So you want to think about that. Think about really saying why, how, what, and who in your communication, and your communication will be far more effective. It's an important starting point. But then you've got a little line across the top here of good things. So for the fear of change, explain the benefits of automation, what RPA is really about, demonstrate the advantages. We'll come to motivate in a little bit. This is all about the why, of course. Why are we doing it? And, often the first thing I've said on projects like this is we are not here to eliminate jobs. We're here to focus on the process and improve the process. If that frees some time up, great, go do something more valuable, but it's not about eliminating jobs. Now that can be a challenge if really the goal of a project or a program is to eliminate jobs, then that's a problem straight away, but that shouldn't be the purpose of automation, right? Team up. Absolutely. Share everyone's contribution to the project. Have quick connects with the stakeholders. That's a great line. The more you involve people in the change, the easier the change will be, the quicker you'll overcome resistance. And a great little tool for all of this is workshops, mini workshops like this. A workshop can be 1 hour, right? And the great thing about a workshop is you can cram some communication in at the beginning, explain the why within the workshop. Then you can naturally include a broad range of people, so include the team. You can be clear on requirements and goals. You can even use a workshop to educate a little bit. So workshops are fantastic for accelerating, overcoming resistance, accelerating people through that change and the learning curves as well. So workshops are a super useful tool. Because you can pack so much change into a workshop. Clear goals, clear expectations, clear requirements, absolutely. The clearer you can be on the vision of the future and on the goal and the scope, especially, that gives people clarity. And one of the things that drives resistance is uncertainty. So the more you can create clarity, the faster you'll overcome resistance. And motivation, this one's a tricky one. How do you motivate people? I'll open that one for a question. How do you motivate people that you're automating their jobs? How give me some input on that one. What are some of the things you can do to motivate people? Thoughts, reactions to all of that? Go ahead, Deepak.
Showing the trends or market trends, how the people are using this. Let's say if they are using any automation project and they are decided to go ahead with that, so maybe we can automate showing the trends, how the people are benefiting by using that tools.
Yeah, it comes down to benefits, right? You've got to give them some benefit. It's the only way you can really motivate people. Of course, the traditional way that people think about benefits is to pay them more money, but that's, oddly enough, it's actually very well proven that bonus does not motivate people on a daily basis. So yes, motivate them through the benefits, get them to really understand the benefits going forward. Absolutely. Good. Any other thoughts, reactions to the ways in which we can overcome resistance? Then let's just quickly jump in. I only have a couple of slides that I want to share with you, and then I want to get a little bit of a conversation going on this. So projects fail. Far more projects fail than they succeed. And statistically, from the Project Management Institute, I myself, I used to have a portfolio over 8 years. We did 4,500 projects. A large portion of those projects failed, even though we had a lot of change management and good project managers running them. It's just natural that projects fail. And they might not fail in a disastrous style. It might be that you've done the project, you've rolled something out, a robot out, for example, great. The robot's successful, you've shown the benefits, but then you come back maybe 3 months later and nobody's using the automation. That's a very common thing to happen. I've seen it in projects I've done myself, where you think, yeah, it was a great project, you've implemented, really accelerated a process, come back to the area 6 months later and go, hey, how's that? How's that robot? Robot Bob was the one that we called. How's Robot Bob working? And like, what's Robot Bob? It's been completely forgotten, which is a great shame, right? Because it was such a good little project. So that happens as well. Reasons why it happens. For sure, the number one statistically proven factor is sponsorship. Comes back to that leadership topic. Really having, a senior manager that's sponsoring and driving that forward. So if we are implementing automation, it takes the leader to really say, this automation is really important for us. It is the future of what we do, and we must embrace it. That's important to come from the sponsors. Having some kind of change management approach in place will increase the success statistically by almost 6 times. Now, it doesn't have to be a complicated change management approach. It can be very simple. I have a couple of very simple ones for you in just a minute to show you that you can apply as you're doing any of the automation projects. Even if you're not necessarily leading a project, you can still apply this in any of your communications or interactions with the subject matter experts or the stakeholders. Preferred senders of messages. This is a really good one. For the high-level business message, it has to come from the senior executives, the sponsors, that kind of, the big why has to come from the executives. For anything that impacts somebody personally, so for all of the employees that you might be automating a process on, the message has to come from the boss. And when you think about that, we kind of know it. If the boss says something is important, then we tend to do it. If the boss doesn't say anything or ignores the automation, then we're going to ignore the automation. Again, it's only natural. We look to the boss. If the boss says, yes, do it, we'll do it. If the boss says nothing, then we'll ignore it. So that's something else to think about when you're doing projects. Are the line managers committed, and are they sending out communications and messages around these topics? Or in reverse, if you interact with one or two of the managers, you can say, hey, look, we would really like you to communicate this, and actually give them the communication to send out to their direct reports. That way you get much greater buy-in. Let's look at the change curve. If you've not come across this change curve, this is one of the fundamental kind of background realities that happens anytime somebody goes through a change, especially when the fear is large, like fear of losing their job, fear of a major change to their role, fear of the unknown, like, oh, I've never come across or worked with a robot or automation before. It's a big unknown for many people. Everybody, without exception, goes through this kind of change curve. As soon as awareness comes, denial will come. Okay, this is often the avoidance moment. I'll just wait for the project to disappear. Nothing's going to change. I'm just going to avoid it. Then fear, anger, resistance comes into it. And this is where some of the open resistance starts to come. And then once people are starting to realize, okay, this is not going to go away, then they'll start to engage. And they'll start to, first of all, find ways around it. But then they will start to try and understand it in more detail, because they'll want to know what the impacts are for them. Am I really going to lose my job from this project? Okay, maybe if I'm not going to lose my job, then am I going to lose 50% of the work that I do? Am I going to have to change my role? And this is when we're starting to come back up the curve a little bit, really trying to understand what are the impacts on me. It can be that people get stuck there and never ever accept the solution. That last kind of 10% is often the most difficult to overcome, that point where they really adopt the change and don't just hope it goes away after 6 months, for example. So this is the change curve. Knowing this and knowing that this is natural and is going to happen with every single employee that's impacted by a project, it's a good thought process. How to overcome that quickly. Here's one of the gems. I wish I had learnt this when I was 20. One way you can get through that and accelerate that change curve is just addressing the 5 basic needs. And everybody has the same needs. If you think about it for a moment, you'll have the same needs as well. In any change, the first thing people want is to be seen. Hey, I'm here. This is impacting me. You know, I'm here. And to be heard. Most people will want to have a say in the change. Hey, this change is ridiculous. It's not going to work. I just want to be heard, right? And the third part of that is then I want to be respected. So people might get angry and say, no, this is stupid. This is not the right thing to do, etc. You can quite easily go, okay, I hear you and I respect what you're saying. Just saying that short sentence already will bring the emotion down immediately, because you're listening to people and you're respecting. It doesn't mean you have to agree with them, and they don't necessarily need you to agree with them, just as long as they're seen, heard, and respected. Those 3 kind of go together. Then the next 2, they need to feel safe. And, you know, maybe safe that they're not losing their job, or if they are losing their job, that they're going to be cared for and taken care of. They need to feel safe. It can be, especially on automation and in finance, for example, is the data secure enough? You know, is the data safe, for example? And they need to belong. They need to belong to a team. They need to belong to the future. You know, everybody needs to belong to some kind of group. So when all of those 5 basic needs are met, then people are ready to change. The great thing about these 5 needs is, especially in your effective communications with your sponsors, with your line managers, you can wrap those 5 things into a short paragraph. You know, you get the sponsor of the project to say these things in a workshop at the beginning. Hey, look, we see that we understand that you're impacted. We're listening to you because we respect your opinion. I can assure you that at the end of this, we'll get safe results. And, you know, you're all part of that community that's moving towards the future. They say that paragraph, and you've addressed all 5 needs. It will help people accelerate through the change. So it's a super powerful but super simple little gem of how to accelerate change. Very, very useful. I'm going to pause there, get your reactions. I've got one more thing to show you, but I'll pause there. Reactions, thoughts, when you think about that a little bit, does that resonate with you? How does it resonate with you? Give me some feedback. I've shocked you all into silence.
This makes complete sense, Mark. So there's one thing, you know, I would like to be heard by my boss. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really important for me. You know, I have opinions, I would have views, so it's really important for, you know, everybody to everybody wants to be heard. So that makes complete sense. Everybody needs to be respected. So, these are some of the qualities which, or some of the things which probably will make any employee, any resource happy. And, it gives them a sense of relief that, they're being respected, they're being heard by their employers, they're being treated equally. So all of this makes complete sense. I mean, this I would say is like the crux for to make any project successful. When it's more or less like that you're keeping everybody happy in a team, right?
Yeah, yeah. And it's really good. Go ahead, Bernard.
A couple of points, Mark, that I would like to add to what Ishan said. Um, Other than that, there is a couple of things that is one is acceptance, of acceptance that the employee kind of gets when things are open and the resistance are kind of dissolved and things like that. And there is a trust factor also that kind of forms, uh, which comes when things are spoken, because mind can really be manipulative. You can think of many things, but once you sit out there and talk, I think the resistance automatically gets dissolved. So that's a good thing to break resistance. Of course, depends on the employer, employee. Nature is different. Some are loud, some are quiet, some are communicative, some are introverted. So that gives a and for from the employer's perspective also, it enhances his leadership skills. The more he talks to people, the more he will be able to understand what are the nuances, what really is going through the employee's mind. So that will help him be a better employee.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, you both given good insight behind that. And if you think about it, therefore, no matter where you are in kind of a project team, you can still address these 5 needs with any of the stakeholders that you're working with. If you're working with a subject matter expert and gathering their requirements, because that's a part of the job that you have to do, you can still address the 5 needs directly with them one-to-one. So you don't necessarily have to be the leader of the project or the leader of a team. In any stakeholder interaction where you're working on a change related project, you can still address these 5 needs in any interaction that you're having. On the reverse side, what tends to happen with projects when things like this start is actually there are almost automatic barriers that are put in place so that you don't listen to to the people and don't really listen more to their concerns. It's not about requirements. This is about their concerns, right? And often opportunities like that won't be allowed. Oh, just gather the requirements. Don't interact with people. Just get their requirements. So finding opportunities to allow people and recognize that they are seen, listen to them, respect them. Again, you don't have to agree with them. That's not the point. And often people don't necessarily expect you to agree with them. It's just a case of respecting their views, that they need to be heard. So it is a great tool that you can use immediately after this session, in your interactions with stakeholders. Just think a little bit about what you're saying to them. And you can say words like, hey, look, I see you, and I get the impact that this might have on you. Tell me a little bit. I want to hear it from you because I respect you, right? I mean, already that is going to open a dialogue and trust that you would not have if you just go in and ask, okay, give me your requirements, give me your requirements. Starts a very different discussion. And therefore, actually, you'll end up getting the requirements faster because they'll be open to you. Right? So little secret hint and tip, super powerful, super powerful. Let me show you one more slide before we finish, and it's this one. So there is a kind of a change management approach by ProSci. It's an international kind of organization around change management, the people aspect of change management, and it's their ADKAR model. And it's a very simple model: awareness, design, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. It follows a little bit that change curve. If you think about it, we start with awareness and we try and build up the desire to change, etc. The training is a key aspect of that, building the ability, then reinforcing the adoption of the change. It's a very simple 5-step approach. You can look on the internet. I'll keep the link to the ProSci AdCast stuff when I send the material out afterwards. It's a good construct to think about your project more end to end. So very early on, create a lot of awareness. Some of the things you put on the whiteboard, exactly that. Articulate the benefits, which help with the awareness. Articulate the goal. Articulate, why we're changing and what's in it for people. Do a lot of that right at the start of the project. That will help accelerate people through the change curve, which means you'll get more buy-in. Training, especially around automation, often with automation, we just expect it to run by itself. But the reality is, the more that people understand how the robot is working, what activities it's doing, where is the data coming from, where is the data ending up, this kind of training around how the robot works is really beneficial. Also, it helps overcome the change resistance as well. And then, of course, if people have to maintain any of the robot or then work with automation as part of a larger end-to-end process, building that ability up is key. So I just wanted to introduce you to that as a kind of a larger project management methodology around change itself. And you can incorporate aspects of that into your normal project plan or into an agile project plan. You can even have sprints on these topics from an agile perspective. But I think one of the best starting points is on the 5 basic needs. So with that then, we've got 5 minutes left. Thoughts, key questions, reactions. Give me some more, because the examples are really good. Like to hear a little bit more from you. Any questions around overcoming resistance, accelerating the change curve, anything else that you might want to bring up?
Yeah, one question here. So as you said, because we have implemented in between the sessions, you said, let's say we have implemented some automation or a bot, and in that case, people are not using. This is the frequent cases related to many of the organizations. They will initiate the process and complete automation will be done. And when we are going back after 1 year or when they are facing any issue into the server ends, then they are responding, yeah, our bot is not running, or we have not used from several days or several months even. So one of the use case I had with one of my big Indian giant, we have invested, and actually they have invested 6 months of the durations for implementing that bot. But at the end of, I mean, annual year, they want to represent the spot with their one of the biggest end user, but it was not working. So then we realized they're not using for last 6 months, and that invested a good amount of investment for building that bot for complete 6 months of duration. So how we can make over it means, anyways, we are supporting them, so that is our activity. But how we can come over with this cause, because people are ready to start the process, but they're not using actually. Still, they are doing the traditional way of their work.
There's 3 aspects to that. First is it really giving people the benefits that they really wanted to see in the first place? I think, often is we can buy stuff, even, buy equipment, things like that. We can change the processes. If it's not really giving them the real benefits, then often people will just drop it, right? That's the first aspect to think about. But that's aligning the original project goal and scope and benefits. Has that really materialized? Right? That's the first aspect of it. Second is change needs to be constant. You know, just because you've changed it once, it needs, you know, looking at again. You know, we buy a house, over time the house deteriorates and we need to paint the house again, right? So having a cycle that comes back and looks and kind of constantly looks at it more from the people aspect than the actual product aspect, you know, almost like repainting the house on a regular basis. That's why organizations are constantly changing, right? Even you think, okay, we've got the perfect organization, why do we change it? Well, they constantly change it because it's a case of repainting the house again and again and again. The third aspect is, was the reinforcement of the adoption really focused on once the project is finished? A mistake that I made lots of times when I started project management, we would do the project and then basically run away and not spend time really reinforcing, especially with automation, and building in the governance around maintenance into the project as well. So I think these three aspects are really key when thinking about the longevity of any of the projects that we do. Just like a car or a house, it needs maintenance, right? You can't do it once and walk away.
Okay, thank you. So what I felt from this, the leader who is handling this project, they are having 13 members of the team, and they want to perform. Actually, earlier when the automation was not in place, they are performing this activity manually. But once we have implemented solutions, first month they have used it because we are monitoring them.
Yeah.
Because within that duration. And
Yeah, and you used the really important word there, monitoring, right? If
yeah,
we have our process management in place, we should be monitoring on a continuous basis. As soon as you, and there is that saying, right? What you measure gets done. When you stop measuring it, people will stop doing it. And that's the governance and the reinforcement part of it, absolutely. And that's why the ADCAR, the big letter at the end, is reinforcement after the adoption. Having reinforcement governance in place is super important. Otherwise, you lose the benefits after time. It's a great example, and it happens often.
thank you.
Fantastic. We are at time. Thank you very much for joining today. Hopefully it's given you some insights, some simple gems of way of overcoming resistance, accelerating the change curve, reinforcing the adoption of change afterwards. I found that super useful in my career, and I've shared that with many, many others that have then gone on to use it. So yes, apply it as soon as you can. And hopefully then you'll see how that can also accelerate the uptake of your projects. With that then, thank you very much for joining today and have the most fantastic weekend.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Have a good
Thank
weekend.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.